Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for possibly the busiest news show we have ever done on this channel. There is absolutely loads and loads and loads of Leeds United news to get into today. It's an absolute blockbuster of a show. It should be anyway. Loads of news to get into. Also, apologies for a few minutes late. Essentially, I sent the stream to the wrong stream somehow and it didn't work properly. So apologies for that. Don't quite know that happened, but there we are. But yeah, as I said, loads to get into today. We're going to start by talking about Leeds United looking like they're going to make a signing. This is coming in from the YEP that Leeds United are set to sign a Nigerian centre-back called Leonard Ngenge, I believe he's called. He's an 18-year-old defender, a Nigerian, so we'll talk all about that, the update there. We're also going to talk about this link to Jorgen Strand Larsen. Now, this is only sort of temporary at this moment in time, and basically what's happened, for anyone that doesn't know, is that Jorgen Strand Larsen at the start of today was 33-1 to join Leeds United, and now he is 2-1 to join to Leeds United. So we'll talk all about that. Would that be a good signing for Leeds United? Well, I think it probably would be. We're also going to talk about this Jack Harrison situation that's bobbling on as well. There's potential that that's actually going to be an obligation to buy and not an option to buy, so we'll talk about that. There's also a Gnonto story coming in that he's been linked again to Italian reports into AC Milan and also Juventus also monitoring, so we'll talk about that. Also, Archie Gray obviously went as well. We'll talk about that. There's also this Gustavo Hamer thing going round. We'll talk about that. There's also, as well, a Charlie Cresswell situation. So you guessed it. We'll talk a bit about that as well. Absolutely mental shot. I don't even want to get through it all, and if we don't, we'll obviously push it in to tomorrow's show as well. But I hope you're ready for probably going to be a long show and hopefully a really enjoyable one for you guys. Also, of course, we're back live, so get your comments in the comment section and we'll go through like we always do as well. Also, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel, especially in this January transfer window when I'm trying to give the channel a bit of a boost. If you could do that, that would be fantastic. Aaron says hello. He says you're late. Yeah, I am late. Apologies for that. Miller, Leeds fan, says evening, mate. Evening to you too, Miller. Nice to see you in the chat, pal. Anyway, as I said, let's start with this. Let's start with the story regarding the player that Leeds United are actually going to sign, because everyone said Leeds United are not going to make a sign in January. Well, they might be, and it looks like they are going to be. And as I said, according to the Auction Post today, Leeds are finally set to sign 18-year-old defender, Nigerian defender, Leonard Ngenge. Apparently, he's been on the club's radar for a long time. I've got to be honest, I don't know much about him, and a pre-contract agreement was already in place. So potentially, I think this is one that's going to come in the summer, but obviously, Leeds United have signed him up basically now, and then he's going to go in the summer. Almost like the situation that's going on with Melly at this moment in time, where now we're at January, obviously foreign clubs outside of the UK can talk to him and get a pre-contractual agreement with Elan Meslier for the summer. So that is the situation with him. I've got to be honest, I don't want to talk too much about this because I don't know loads about the player and I don't want to bore you all with just me waffling on about nonsense. But that situation is also apparently been recently spotted at Thorpe Arch as well. So, as I said, this looks like a decent addition from all accounts. Look, this is one that's the scouting department. This is one that's like a Pascal Strauch signing when we signed him back in the day. This is a young, up-and-coming centre-back that obviously Leeds United are going to come bring in. Probably going to go into the under-21s, I would have thought, and hopefully someone that can add something in a few years' time for Leeds United. That's what we're hoping. Obviously, we signed a few players like this, didn't we? Sort of under Bielsa's era. I'm looking at the likes of Cody Drama, etc., Joe Gellart as well, and none of them have been that effective so far. Hopefully, Ngenge though will be a different story for him, and hopefully in future years to come he could be playing for this football club. But this is what we talk about. I mean, I talked about this right at the start with when Archie Gray obviously signed the contract at Leeds. That made it really important. Obviously, we want to make this a home for young up and coming talent to come to Leeds United and be involved in the sort of the environment at Leeds United and make it an attractive proposition like Man City have been over the years, because you can make obviously tons of money on sort of young players coming through, and it obviously helps your PSR books. So this is good. This is what Leeds United need to be doing. As I said, I don't know loads about the player. I don't want to confess to know loads. But in terms of Leeds United going out and doing proper scouting, this is exactly what I want. Cheap players coming in. Yes, they might not all work, but even if you sign 5 of them for free, and one of them becomes a player in your first team, that is massively worth it to do. So this is exactly what Leeds United should be doing, and I'm happy that they are. Anyway, let's move on to this Jorgen Strand Larsen story, shall we? And this is something that's, as I said, has sort of like hit Twitter in the last sort of hour. In fact, while I was making this show, and obviously the prep that goes into these shows, this wasn't actually a thing, and it's recently come to the eventuality, and obviously looks like it's there's obviously there's a lot of conversation about it at this moment in time. I'm interested to know what you all guys think about Jorgen Strand Larsen. For me, this would be, I mean, let's get this straight. All we've seen so far with this is he's gone from 33 to 1 this morning to 2 to 1. Now that's an indication that obviously people are putting bets on Strand Larsen to come to Leeds. And if people are putting bets on, sometimes when you get these massive drops and drops in prices on a player like a transfer like this, it's usually because can sometimes mean that obviously that's close to an agreement. Hence, people are placing bets on it. I've got to be honest, if this was to happen, this would be an unbelievable bit of business, in my opinion. I really rate Jorgen Strand Larsen. Obviously, scored 14 goals last season in the Wolves team. Yes, he struggled this year. Scored a hat-trick at the weekend, though, against Shrewsbury. But he's been, I think he's got maybe 1 or 2 goals in the league this season, so he's not been prolific. But you've got to bear in mind, he's obviously playing a really poor Wolves team this season, that are obviously looking like one of the worst teams that ever play in the Premier League. So I'm not expecting him to get loads of service. I'm not expecting him to do loads of stuff. But as I said, for me, if Leeds United could get a Jorgen Strand Larsen in January, he's the perfect profile for me. He's strong, fast. I think he's about 6'3" as well. He's tall. He's good in the air. He's everything that when I would be looking for a striker for Leeds United and looking at a profile striker for Leeds United that I would want. He would be absolutely perfect. Do I think this is going to happen? I think probably not. I would expect, truthfully, if he's going to go anywhere, maybe he's going to go a step above Leeds United, or potentially Leeds United might be priced out of this move, obviously, just on a finances base, because we know Leeds United don't have tons of money. But I've always thought this, and this is true to not just the Jorgen Strand Larsen, but in terms of loads of different signings. I think there's a situation where if the right player becomes available for Leeds United in January, they will do it a loan with obligation to buy if they stay in the Premier League. I think that's what Leeds United will do, in my opinion, with deals. And basically, all you do is you go, well, we're going to sign him this summer at this price. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a loan and buy him this summer at that price with an option to buy or an obligation to buy, and essentially just bring forward the signings. We see this all the time. I mean, this has happened at a lot of big clubs where, as I said, they were going to sign them in the summer and then they become available in January and they just do the deal early. And I think, as I said, if the correct player becomes available in January for Leeds United, someone that they would look at doing a deal with in the summer, and you can do it, and they're open to doing a sort of loan with obligation, I think Leeds United will do it. We've seen obviously Joe Willock linked in a sort of, and you'd expect this to be sort of same capacity. I don't know if Joe Willock will be someone that the club in the summer would look at, but for me in the summer, I would definitely, in the summer, if Wolves go down, which obviously they're going to do, and Leeds United do stay up, Jorgen Strand Larsen would be one of the players at the top of my list for Leeds United to sign in the summer transfer window. So I think it makes sense to do it now if you can do. Obviously, if we can't and we have to do it and it's a summer edition, then fine. But obviously, you're chancing it then that Leeds United might not stay in the division. But I think if Leeds United were to sign Strand Larsen as well, you've got to bear in mind that would maybe take Leeds United to the next level this season and potentially make sure that we obviously retain in our Premier League safety. So I think that's something you've got to bear in mind. I'm sure Newcastle looked in before this. Yeah, they did. In fact, Newcastle bid £60 million in the summer for Jorgen Strand Larsen, which was turned down by Wolves. Obviously, Leeds United are going to be nowhere near at 60 million. But because Wolves are going to get relegated, as we all know, and because Jorgen Strand Larsen hasn't had the season probably that people were expecting at the start of the year, that would probably bring his price point down, I would imagine, at this time in January to, I would imagine, you better get a deal done with an obligation for maybe 30 to 35 million pounds, which I think's good. I think that's a good value. And as I said, people are going to go, Scott, what are you talking about? Leeds won't pay that, but they probably can do in an obligation to buy next summer. The only thing obviously would be is if you get to next summer, then you probably bought your strikers, you bought him in January, so then you probably can't do another striker in the summer, and you've got to bear in mind that deal's been pushed into next year, and it would take obviously off the summer wage bill, or the summer sort of transfer kitty as such. But as I said, if you can get Strand Larsen in January on an obligation to buy, if Leeds United stay in the Premier League, for me, you do it. I think you definitely do it. He's someone that, as I said, could fight with DCL for the places, and he'd be absolutely perfect. And there's not much more I need to say. I know people will look at his goal scoring record this year, but I really wouldn't do. I think he's a fantastic player. Jack says, evening, Scott. Evening to you too, Jack. Nice to see you in the chat, mate. Really nice to see you in the chat. Anyway, let's move on from that story, or potential story anyway with that one, and let's talk a bit about this sort of Gnonto situation. As you can tell, I am trying to fly through it a bit tonight because otherwise we will be talking for about 25 hours with how much news there is to talk about. But Gnonto, now, I wasn't going to bring this Gnonto sort of situation into the show today, because obviously the source is not fully credible. But the reason I brought it into the show is not massive because of the source. It's more because what the source was saying, and I think it's something that needs mentioning sort of regardless. And it basically states that obviously Juventus, AC Milan and Inter Milan are all interested in the services of Wilfried Gnonto. And apparently Gnonto is not pleased with his game time at this moment, at this point in time at Leeds United. And that's the bit that caught me, because even if this story is complete nonsense, which I think there's a very much a high possibility that, or probability that it is, I think there's definitely something in the fact that Gnonto will be frustrated with his game time. And I do think that there will be Italian clubs, and there's been Italian clubs for a long time, that have been sort of interested in Gnonto, and I think there's probably truth in that. So where I'm at with it is that I don't want to sell Gnonto, and I think I think he plays an integral part into this squad. I think if Okafor was to go down injured, I look out wide, and you've then got sort of Aronson and Dan James, and obviously Dan James is going to be back from injury soon. And you look at it and you go, yes, they're fine. And Aronson's obviously having a great time at this moment in time. But I don't see maybe the creativity or that sort of moment of brilliance that you maybe have in Wilfried Gnonto. I think at times Wilfried Gnonto's quite an individualistic player in a really good capacity, in terms of he's a bit of a maverick, and he can sometimes get the ball and just do something special, see the pass that maybe another player won't see. And I don't think, as good as I said Brendan Aronson's been at this moment in time, and he's playing fantastically, probably the best form of his Leeds United career, really. And obviously Dan James, we know, has got that pacing behind, and he offers a sort of a different sort of attributes in that sense. I don't think we've got someone like Gnonto, especially if Okafor was to go down. And we know Okafor's got that injury record. So for me, I wouldn't be selling Gnonto in January at all, really, unless a silly offer came in. But I'm not that surprised that he's sort of been linked away, and I wouldn't be that shocked if I don't think Leeds will sell him, but I won't be that shocked if this time next year Wilfried Gnonto isn't at the football club anymore. I haven't been totally honest. I think in the summer there might be some discussions about that, and sort of maybe have to part ways, just because he's just not getting the game time that I think he wants. To be honest with you, and I've said this a few times on the channel, so it's not a first. I think, as I always say, Daniel Farke for me has done a lot of good things at this football club. I know he's not people's favourite, but I think recently he's proved sort of me and the other people that are backing him right in terms of what he's been able to achieve. One thing that he's never been able to do that well, though, I don't think he's ever really got the best out of Gnonto, in my personal opinion. When we got relegated, I will always argue with this, and I will say this with Gnonto, I thought you were looking at the player of the season in the Championship. And people might go, that's a ridiculous expectation, and you're probably right, but I looked at what he provided in the Premier League to Leeds United. I looked at, obviously, the bids that were coming in the summer from Everton's and stuff, who were massively linked, and I thought he could be the player of the season. I think the way he took the Premier League by storm in that first season under Jesse Marsh. And it didn't really happen for him in the Championship. He wasn't awful. He just wasn't like the standout player. He didn't have a Somerville-esque season, if that makes sense. And I think the same. And then the second season, I thought the same thing. Again, I thought in the summer, it looks to me like, I thought he looks like he could be the player of the season again the season after. Obviously, Somerville had moved on. That left wing spot was available. And I thought he could go in at the left-hand side and he'll end up being player of the season. And again, he had like a decent season, but he wasn't our starting wingers last year. It was Solomon and James, and he's just never really progressed on from that first season, and that's probably maybe down to a bit of what he's done, and it's maybe a bit down to the way Daniel Farke has moulded with him, and it's probably not been that sort of perfect connection with him. And I think we are getting to a point with Gnonto at some stage where he's too good of a player to play these intermittent minutes, in my opinion. And I think when that happens, usually the outcome ends up being that the player leaves the football club. So as I said, I don't think this is the January move, but unless something changes in the next 6 months going up to the sort of end of the season, I would be surprised if Gnonto is a Leeds United player again. And I didn't think I was saying that, I must admit. Please sell Gnonto, says Aaron. I just disagree with this, Aaron. I don't think... I disagree fundamentally. Aaron says, would you have Brian Deane as manager next year? Brian Deane? I'm not even sure he is, mate, in truth. So, have I been baited there? Maybe I have. I don't know who he is. Anyway, let's move on from that story and let's talk a bit about this Harry Gray deal, because this is something that isn't a rumour. This has obviously definitely happened. I've got to be honest with this Harry Gray situation. I've seen a lot of negativity online regarding sort of him going to Rotherham. My only thing is, I don't care where Rotherham are in the league. I just want him to play in a team where he's going to play football. If that means he goes to the top of League One or the bottom of League One, I'm not that bothered, in truth. I don't really care. I just want him to get first team football and experience what it's like. Because I think I know the under-23s level and the sort of quality of under-23s football has come on dramatically in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. 100% in this country, it really has. But there's nothing like men's football in terms of the physicality that it brings. Yes, I think in the 23 sometimes I think the quality is a bit higher. But I don't think you get the physicality if you do from the sort of the full first teamers at any level, really. So I think Harry Gray going out and getting experience at a first team club is massively important. No matter the league and no matter the level, within reason. I don't really want him to go in obviously into the League Two. I thought League One was probably his level. And hopefully at Rotherham, because they're struggling at this moment in time, struggling to score goals, he can go in there and he can play week in, week out. And when you look at sort of what Leeds United have been doing and what they should have done, the due diligence around this signing for Rotherham, Leeds United should have been saying to Rotherham, look, we've got these offers in League One and we're going to send him to somewhere that's going to play. So can you sort of promise us game time? Obviously, if he performs well at Rotherham, and I would hope that Leeds United have done that, because Leeds United have failed at this before with Ramazani, where he's not played. With Joseph, where he's been sort of in and out the team, and when you send a player on loan, the number one aim is that they've got to play football. So I wasn't as bothered by where he went, Harry Gray, just that he actually went and played football, and it looks like Rotherham will play. He's obviously still in Yorkshire as well, which I think is a good thing. It's a strong, hard league, is League One. There's a few. It's a bit of a sort of more competitive league this year. There's no loads of standout teams in there, so I'm just going to be interested to see how he gets on, and hopefully he can score a few goals. But obviously he's done his interview, and he was basically saying that he was looking to move in January. He wanted to get out of the under-23 setup and he wanted to go and play some first-team football, and I think that's obviously where this has ended up happening. And I think that's interesting. I think that's ambitious from Archie Gray, Harry Gray, to say, and exactly sort of what he needed for his development. Because I'm looking at it and going, I don't think Leeds are going to go down at all. That's really not what I think. But if Leeds United were to be relegated this season, you'd look at Harry Gray and you want him to be ready to go for a championship campaign. Then, like we saw from Archie with the first year we got relegated, and that's why we need him to go out and play football, so he's ready to go if we do drop, or even just have now and then minutes, I guess, in the Premier League as well. Farke's barely started him during his tenure, still holds value, makes sense to sell him. Yeah, that's regarding Gnonto. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like he's a PSR player. We bought him for very little. He'll still hold good value. I still think you better get 50 to sort of £20 million for Wilfried Gnonto, and it does kind of make sense. I just really like Gnonto, and I think there's something in him that's sort of got that sort of get you off your seat, maverick player in him, and I really like that. And because of that reason, I sort of maybe selfishly want to keep him. But as I said, I think sometimes when this happens, you know that it's probably going to come to an end, and I think it might end up coming to an end with Leeds and Gnonto. Anyway, let's move on from Gnonto and Harry Gray and move on to Jack Harrison now. I know we're getting through this show. We are getting through it. So the update regarding Jack Harrison, I thought this was interesting. I thought I'd bring it to the show, is that according to Gianluigi Longari, who is an Italian reporter, he's saying that actually the deal currently, there's been reports obviously that this deal is going to be a loan with an option to buy of around £10 million, whereas he's now reporting, and this is the sort of newish report we've got on this Jack Harrison situation, that actually Leeds United are looking for a loan with an obligation of around the £15 million mark. Now, that would be an absolutely unbelievable deal for Leeds United if they can do a loan with obligation. My honest thoughts is, though, that this will not happen. I don't think we're going to get sort of £15 million for Jack Harrison or an obligation to buy in there. And one thing I do want to be sort of conscious with this deal, obviously I'm not involved in the deal, but from the outside looking in, that looks too good to be true. And sometimes when it is, it just doesn't end up happening. So I don't want Leeds to mess this up. I want this to make sure this goes through, because I think it's important we get him off the wage bill, and important there is sort of an option to buy at the end of it. So even if that is the case, I still think it's a decent deal for Leeds United, just because I just don't think, obviously, Harrison really holds any value for us at this moment in time in terms of what he can bring to the football club. So yeah, I'm liking it, and it looks good, and I think Leeds United obviously should be pushing for the best deal, of course, but I just don't want this to mess up the actual deal we had potentially before, if that is what's going on. But as I said, if that does end up happening, wow, what a deal that would be, eh? What an absolute deal that would be. Anyway, that's the situation with Jack Harrison. Charlie Cresswell now. This is the most ridiculous show I think I've ever done. Maybe I shouldn't have picked as many topics. Maybe that was a mistake. But we're nearly getting through them now. But Charlie Cresswell. So the reason I brought this into the show is that according to Florian Plettenberg, who obviously we know, and I've talked about on the channel before, has got brilliant sort of sources in and around Germany. He's fantastic for German reports, Florian Plettenberg, and as for years on years gone by. He obviously was the one that, as I said, broke the Rutter story a few years ago. But he's reporting that basically Wolfsburg are in basically advanced negotiations to sign, in concrete negotiation to sign Charlie Cresswell from Toulouse. Now, of course, the first thing with this situation is that Leeds United have a sell-on clause in Charlie Cresswell's contract, which we believe to be in the region of around 15%. So that could bring some nice money into the football club, of course. So that's one thing to bear in mind with this deal. And the other thing to bear in mind with this Charlie Cresswell deal is, when we looked at the sort of Daniele Ducchi deal that obviously Leeds United have been linked to all windows, probably the most concrete link we've still got. I know the YEP keeps kind of rubbishing it, but it still keeps, I think, as I said, when Florian Plettenberg mentions it, there's still probably some credibility in it as well. Obviously, we know one of the main sort of teams that were actually interested in Ducchi that weren't Leeds United was Wolfsburg. So not only could this deal bring Leeds United some actual revenue in terms of being able to actually then sign or get money to football club from the obviously signature that Wolfsburg might make of Charlie Cresswell, but the other side of this is that this might then stop because they signed Charlie Cresswell. They might no longer want to sign Ducchi, and that might open Leeds United up to signing Ducchi as well with the money that they've actually just got from Cresswell. So as I said, it's an interesting situation actually with this. And I think this is one where we're gonna have to keep a sort of eye out to see how this ends up turning out. But I would like, because obviously West Ham have been linked to Cresswell as well. But in a personal preference, I would like Cresswell to go to Wolfsburg, Leeds United get the money, and then we get that money that we get from the sell-on clause that we then can put into Ducchi and hopefully get him in January. That sounds perfect. That is perfect outcome. And I actually think we're sort of, the closer this deal gets to happening, I think we are maybe heading more towards that outcome, which is just fantastic for Leeds United. So as I said, this is again another one to keep an eye on, and we'll see how this goes on. Maybe it's something we'll cover again tomorrow. And we'll go from there really. But yeah, that's got to be a positive deal for Leeds United for sure. It's a shame because I'd love Leeds to have kept him, but good business for Leeds with the sell-on. Yeah, no, I think regarding that, Miller, the only thing I would say about the Cresswell situation is I actually think it was a bad bit of business that we sold him. I do. I know he wasn't playing Daniel Farke's plans, but I think he was in the England setup. He was obviously really highly rated by Leeds United and obviously England, hence he was playing. And I think I think the football club have done a lot of decent business since the tenure. Definitely the 49ers. I think they have. I think they've been definitely a net positive on the football club from the previous regime. I think one of their mess ups has been the Charlie Cresswell deal, though, in my personal opinion. I think they got 3.8 million, if my memory remembers right. And we all said at the time that probably wasn't going to be enough. And we also said at the time as well, of course, that we probably should have kept him. And when we're looking at the profile that Leeds United are trying to sign, and they're trying to sign in the summer of centre-backs, it actually is the Charlie Cresswell profile. Like, even if you looked at Be-All in the summer and what we're trying to sign in terms of who is a similar player, Charlie Cresswell's actually one of them. So yeah, that is, I think they messed up with the Cresswell thing, and I just think that they just got it wrong. But thankfully, at least we've got this sort of sell-on clause, so we can at least get a bit of the money back. But we've probably messed up there in truth. Harry says, do you think there's anything in the Strand Larsen to Leeds? We talked about it on the show, mate. I don't think we'll sign Strand Larsen. I think the only way we'd sign Strand Larsen is if it was a summer deal. I don't think he'll come in January, because I think he'll think, well, I think if I'm Strand Larsen, what I'm thinking in January is, why don't I just wait till the end of the season? I'll definitely go at the end of the season. I'm still playing in the Premier League anyway, even though I'm playing for a poor club. And then in the summer, I can look at my options, and Leeds United might have gone down. So let's not go there, and let's just see where else I can go. So I think it's unlikely Wolves are going to sell him to us in the first place, because I don't think they'd be open to an obligation to buy if we stay in the Premier League. Because why would they? What would the point in that in case we go down? And the second reason I think it's probably nonsense again is on Strand Larsen's level. would he actually want to come to Leeds when he could wait to the end of the season and open up his options? So I think that they're two things you've got to bear in mind with this deal. However, do I think Leeds United probably would like to sign Strand Larsen if he was available at a price that they could get him for in some sort of agreement? Do I think the club would be open to it? I absolutely do think the club would be open to it. I mean, as I said, he fits the profile to a T, doesn't he? He's tall, he's strong. Fantastic. He's got all the attributes to me of a top striker, and he's done it in this level before. Obviously, scoring 14 Premier League goals last season, which is a massive amount of goals in the Premiership. So, as I said, I'd be well open to the Strand Larsen deal, and I think Leeds United would be. It's just if you could get Wolves to agree to the terms that we'd want, and also, of course, if you could get and also if you could obviously get. If we get Strand Larsen to sign, of course, as well. I just rolled out of bed. Sorry, who have we signed again? We have signed, mate, a Nigerian defender called Ngenge. Something like that. I've probably butchered the name, but he's an 18-year-old Nigerian centre-back, and he looks like he's going to sign. It's probably one for the development squad. He's probably not going to come into the first team, but that's the update. As I said as well, I talked about that right at the start of the video. So, like I always say, by the way, at the end of the video, if you want to watch this video in whole, and you do watch live, and you watch, I always think watch to the end, and then just roll it back to the start, and you can watch the first sort of half or wherever you joined in, and then obviously leave when you've got to your point that you're at in the first place, if that makes sense. But that's I always say to people to do that. It's always a good way to watch it. Another thing I wanted to talk about as well, and this is not something that's massively Leeds related as such, but obviously it kind of is, and I've seen it knocking around on Twitter, and I thought I'd have my sort of my stance on it as such, is the Gustavo Hamer deal. And I don't know if anyone's seen this, but the reports are, and this is from really credible sources actually, and Ben Jacobs I think's quoted it, and quite a few others, that actually Gustavo Hamer will be available for a cut price of £6 million in January. Now that is cheap. That is cheap. He's not had the greatest season at Sheffield United. Not awful season, but not the greatest season in the world. We know Leeds United will heavily link to him in the summer. We made a sort of a last-ditch attempt. This was reported strongly by Sheffield United sides, especially at the time, but really credible people. I think it's... look, I don't think Leeds United are going to sign Gustavo Hamer, but I think it's one to have a look at. The only thing with this Gustavo Hamer thing for me is that when I heard the name originally, I thought, I think this is one's probably past now. I think this is one's probably too late to occur to Leeds United. I think when we were looking at him originally, obviously, when we first got relegated and we were 26, it looked like that was the time to go get him. And then he obviously went to Sheffield United, and then we tried again, and it didn't quite work. And I think now I look at the Gustavo Hamer deal and think he's probably past his sell-by date, probably. But then you see the price point and you think, ooh, that might not be that bad, actually. So, again, that's probably something, it's probably just something to have a look at, the Gustavo Hamer deal. And if you could get him for £6 million with like a loan, again, with an obligation to buy, it's probably quite a good business, that, you know, because I think he's still worth more than that. And I do think he could bring something to the Leeds United team. I still think in that sort of number, say when we play this sort of 5-3-2, which we do a lot of the times, I still think we're probably missing someone in that midfield. So you go Ampadu, Stack, and then you go maybe like a more attacking midfield player, but can also drop in and play that number 8 role. And I do think actually Gustavo Hamer will be perfect for that in the Leeds United system. I also think he's got that element of class in him as well. He's a fantastic set piece taker, which we know Leeds United maybe need as well, because at the moment we've got Stack taking our corners, who's 6'4". So obviously Gustavo Hamer delivers a fantastic corner. But also as we talked about with Gnonto, Gustavo Hamer, the reason I've always liked him is he's such a maverick, and he's got that moment of brilliance in him where he can just win a game for him on his own with like a worldy long shot or whatever it is. And I just love players like that. So, look, I don't think this is going to happen, and there's other clubs linked to Gustavo Hamer. I think Cremonese in Italy are linked to him. But it would be something that you maybe have a look at and just sort of see what the terms that Sheffield United are wanting. Because, yes, maybe it's past its sell-by date, but I don't think I'd say no, I must admit. Anyway, that is where I'm at for the show today. Absolute blockbuster show. It's been non-stop news for the entire show. We usually talk a lot more about each individual segment because there's been so much news today. It's sort of been a bit of a sort of not rush through, but not as much detail on each one. But I hope you've enjoyed it as always. We'll be back tomorrow. I haven't decided what the show's going to be tomorrow, in truth. It might well be a transfer thing like it has been today, or it might be a preview. Guess you'll have to just look out, of course. But I've enjoyed it tonight. I was quite tired going to it, but it's woke me right up. So I hope you've all enjoyed it as well. And as I said, I will see you tomorrow. We're back at 8 PM, definitely tomorrow, because I was meant to do 8 PM to 7 PM today, and I ended up doing 8 because I was busy, but it will be 8 again tomorrow. Worth every penny, that boy. he's little but strong. He's strong. Is that who you're referring to? Are you referring to Gustavo Hamer there? Potentially. Yeah, no, I like him. Anyway, but yeah, thanks all for watching as always. As I said, if you could drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Does mess up the channel because I'm a small channel, as I always say. It really, really helps. It boosts it up, and the views have been brilliant recently, and it's down to you guys supporting me. So thank you very much, and have a great evening as well to all you watching live. Thanks, cheers, mate. Have a great evening. Thank you, mate. See you later, everybody. Bye for now.